Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Écoutez, en premier lieu, je voudrais mentionner que je suis très heureux ici comme francophone québécois. C'est facile de dire québécois, mais comme francophone. Pour vous dire, ce matin, j'ai rencontré des gens de la Société francophone du Manitoba, M. Daniel Boucher et John Johnson, qui ont parlé de la francophonie, l'importance de la francophonie au Manitoba. Je suis très impressionné de voir combien il y a de gens ici qui parlent le français, que ce soit la première langue ou les deux langues officielles. Et j'ai démontré aussi l'importance pour moi, comme Québécois, de supporter la francophonie partout au Canada, nos deux langues officielles. And so now we'll switch to English. So I'm glad to be here this morning to talk about public safety. My name is Pierre Paulus. I'm the Public Safety Shadow Minister in the official opposition. I'm here with my colleagues from Parliament, so Mr. Larry Maguire, Candice Bergen, James Bazan, and Ted Falk. Also, we have some candidates for the next election, and we have people who came here this morning, leaders from the community, to talk in a roundtable about the importance of public safety for Winnipeg and everywhere in Manitoba. And so this morning, we have a plan. We have a plan called For a Safer Canada. And today it's the third pillar of our plan. And I'll let my leader, Mr. Andrew Scheer, talk more about that. Mr. Scheer.
Bonjour à tous et bienvenue. Merci beaucoup d'être ici. I'd like to thank my colleagues from the House of Commons who are here with us this morning, Ted Falk, James Suzanne, Candice Bergen. We also have several of our candidates who will be representing the party in the next election as well. We have Marty Morantz, Raquel Dancho, Réjean Caron, Lawrence Tote, and Dan Mazier. Thank you very much for being here, and thanks for your commitment to that. Oh, and Larry Maguire, I'm sorry, I stopped at Candice. I didn't keep going last. Larry, thank you very much for being here as well, and thanks for participating in the roundtable that we just had. So I sincerely appreciate all of you being here and all the work that's gone on in terms of developing our policies on these issues. So last month I unveiled the first two parts of my three-part plan for a safer Canada. In Brampton, I outlined the steps that a Conservative government will take to swiftly and firmly crack down on gangs and criminal organizations. By ending automatic bail eligibility for gang members, identifying gangs in the criminal code, revoking parole for gang members who rejoin their gang, and imposing new and tougher sentences for crimes related to gang activity and criminal organizations. We're going to make sure that violent criminals and repeat offenders end up where they belong, behind bars. And in Vancouver, I shared our Conservative plan for effective gun laws that target criminals, not law-abiding firearms owners. Comme les spécialistes des forces de l'ordre et même quelques députés libéraux le reconnaissent, l'interdiction systématique d'armes de poing de Justin Trudeau ne fera rien pour réduire les crimes armés. Like law enforcement officials and experts in the field, and even one or two Liberal MPs will acknowledge, outright banning handguns will do nothing to effectively combat violent crime and gun crime in our cities and communities. Mon plan cible ceux qui utilisent les armes pour commettre des crimes et ont les Canadiens respectueux des lois qui sont responsables avec leur bien personnel. My plan contains a host of new measures aimed at getting guns out of the hands of criminals, including prison time for knowingly possessing a smuggled gun, new penalties for selling guns to prohibited users, and a new Canada Border Services Agency firearms smuggling task force that will tackle the growing problem of firearms crossing into Canada from the United States. And the response from Canadians has been very positive. À travers le pays, les gens ont assez de l'échec de Justin Trudeau face aux crimes commis par les gangs et les crimes armés. People should not have to worry about violence in their own neighborhoods, but sadly this is a reality that more and more Canadians face. The latest data shows that Canada's murder rate is at its highest level in almost a decade, while gang-related murders have increased every year for the past 3 years. Face à la hausse des crimes commis par les gangs et les crimes armés, les Canadiens sont préoccupés par la sécurité de leurs familles. Il s'attend que le gouvernement intervienne. Cependant, Justin Trudeau n'a rien fait. Il a manqué à son devoir de garder les Canadiens en sécurité et cet échec a de graves conséquences. This duty should be any government's most sacred. But to keep Canadians safe, our police forces need the proper resources. And that's why I'm here to talk about today, for my final plan in a safer Canada. Policemen and women put their lives on the line each and every day to protect Canadians and get dangerous criminals off of our streets. We owe them a debt of gratitude for what they do. But more importantly, we owe them the resources they need to do their job. And that's why a Conservative government will better equip police to protect our communities, starting with a targeted investment to fight gang crime across Canada. We will establish a police infrastructure grant program so our police forces can upgrade their equipment and access new, innovative technologies. And we are going to speed up background checks for new firearm license applicants and require all guns seized in connection to crime to be added to the appropriate databases. On ne peut pas seulement parler de crimes et de sanctions. Nous avons entendu les parents et les groupes communautaires de partout au pays nous dire que nous devons aussi en faire plus pour empêcher les jeunes de se joindre aux gangs au départ. We can't just talk about crimes and about tough laws and penalties. That's part of it, but we also need to talk about prevention as well. And that's why a Conservative government will increase funding for the Youth Gang Prevention Fund that our previous Conservative government established in 2006 and made permanent in 2011. And we will reform the prison skills training system so we can make prison time meaningful for both offenders and for the public. As the Auditor General has noted, many of the corrections programs currently do not measure successful reintegration of offenders, or they report incomplete data on recidivism rates. Prison time should be meaningful. We should make sure that the programs that are being offered to people while they're incarcerated actually produce the required results. The Conservative government will conduct a comprehensive audit of all correctional services programs so that those who want to make a fresh start upon their release will be able to do so. Together with my plan to crack down on gangs and keep guns out of the hands of violent criminals, my plan to equip our police forces, invest in prevention programs, and make prison time meaningful, and altogether to make a safer Canada will show Canadians that a Conservative government is ready to put their safety and their security first. Nous allons restaurer la confiance que Justin Trudeau a brisée pour que les Canadiens aient à nouveau foi en leur système de justice. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Happy to take your questions.
There's some criticism by the Liberals that a lot of these measures already fall under C-71, and there is already an integrated border services task force that handles, gun smuggling, etc. What's your reaction?
So C-71 is not an effective way to tackle firearms issues in Canada. It is a backdoor gun registry that has been widely denounced by both law enforcement officials and firearms stakeholders. Also, I should mention, at the same time, Bill C-75 is going through Parliament. Bill C-75 actually reduces penalties for the very types of violent crimes that we've seen an increase in, specifically related to gang activity. It also contained measures to weaken penalties for terrorist-related activities, and it was only after the Conservative Party and our Conservative caucus mounted fierce opposition at committee that we were able to convince the government to delete some of those proposals, but many of the provisions weakening penalties under the system still remain. When it comes to the task force, there are still an awful lot of silos within government responses to smuggling, especially when it comes to firearms. For example, for the Canada Border Services Agency to interact with a local police force that is right on the border, whether it's at a port like Vancouver or Halifax or near a land border crossing, they first have to go through different layers of government before they can even talk to the local law enforcement. So those are the types of things that are bureaucratic regulations that prevent the swift responses that are needed to get these types of guns off the streets and out of the hands of criminals.
I have a question for my colleagues in Ottawa. It's a new report that's coming out today from the National Security Committee called Parliamentarians, and it's talking about the Prime Minister's trip to India, where in fact there was a convicted failed assassin that was part of the delegation there. Have you ever evaluated security at any of your public events since this incident happened, and what changes have you brought in?
Well, look, we always try to make sure we have open and accessible events when I'm speaking to the public. When we have events that are run to get as many people in the room as possible, of course, we do have try to find out who's coming, but many of our events are open. But what we're talking about in the Prime Minister's India trip was not some kind of public appearance where he was meeting to members of the general public. We're talking about an invitation-only event. We're talking about a member of his caucus who reached out and invited this convicted attempted murderer to an event with the Prime Minister, with members of the Indian government. The Prime Minister's trip to India on so many levels has resulted in very serious negative consequences for our country in terms of the confidence that we have in the security protocols put in place around these events, the diplomatic damage that was done by having this individual at this event, and then afterwards senior members of the government accusing the government of India as being complicit in it. So we're going to find out more details later on today as the actual scope of the failures for the Prime Minister's office to manage this type of event. But I think there's a big difference between having a public event where a member of Parliament or a party leader is trying to speak to as many people as possible, and an invitation-only private event sponsored and paid for by the embassy, by the High Commission. There's a huge difference on that. Quite clearly, it's a security lapse when you have a convicted attempted murderer who has who received an official invitation on foreign soil in your host country, and you have that person invited to an official event. Absolutely, there's a breakdown there.
Mr. Shearer, I'm wondering if I can get your reaction to the announcement by Ms. Notley about cutting horses and cutting in Alberta. It's obviously the information in the market. It doesn't happen very often in Alberta, and there's mixed reaction when you
Well, first let me just say that on behalf of the entire Conservative Party and our colleagues, our hearts and our sympathies are with the thousands and thousands of families that have had terrible news in the last few years as the job losses continue to mount. I've been to Alberta several times recently. The level of anxiety is very pronounced and very real. People are very worried about what the next year is going to look like. I will say that whatever is being discussed at the provincial level is a direct result of Justin Trudeau's failure to get our energy to market. We had a situation where when Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, there were 3 major pipeline proponents that were willing to use private sector dollars to build pipelines to get our product to market. He cancelled Northern Gateway, he killed Energy East, and now he has had Trans Mountain in a period of limbo for almost a year now. In terms of owning it, it's been in limbo for much longer than that because he can't get it built. So when you look at the Prime Minister talking down our energy sector, when you see him go on the international cocktail circuit and say that he's frustrated that he can't phase out the energy sector quicker, I believe what we're seeing is a systematic strangulation of our energy sector by this Liberal government. They don't believe in it. You look at their senior officials, they say they want to transition Canada out of the energy business altogether, and I am very worried that this is the direct result of a series of policy choices that this government have made. So a Conservative government in 2019, we'll get our energy to market, we'll get those pipelines built, and we'll do it the old-fashioned way that happened for generations in Canada by creating a system where the private sector will use private dollars to get projects built, a clear system of rules, not a series of moving goalposts, and a Prime Minister and a government that champions the energy sector, not talks it down all around the world.
Some of the rules have changed in recent decades with the duty to consult First Nations, for example. So how would you overcome some of the opposition's instruction?
Do you know the rules? Some of the rules are being changed by this Liberal government. The rules were changed on Energy East when this Liberal government imposed an upstream and a downstream emissions test, the only industry in Canada that faces such a double standard. And by the way, a standard that is not imposed on foreign oil that's imported from countries like Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and Algeria. There are no other restrictions put on imports of foreign oil. That was a choice that this Liberal government made. Bill C-69, which is currently going through the Senate, imposes a whole host of new hurdles that allows foreign groups with foreign funding into advocacy groups here in Canada appear before these hearings. There are rules that have been changed by the Liberal government to make it harder to get these projects built. When it comes to consultations with First Nations, the judge that ruled on the Trans Mountain case was very clear. It was a failure on this government to properly execute the consultations. It wasn't necessarily a question of the rules changing. It was a failure for this government to actually execute. And that's why part of my plan to get pipelines built includes a special ministerial representative that has the mandate and the ability to have a dynamic interaction with First Nations communities so that the consultations part of the piece can be done properly.
tackle meth and the issues, the big problem here in the city, how would this plan kind of tackle a problem?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And I just did a walkabout with the Bear Clan, which is a great local community organization that provides a lot of on-the-ground, person-to-person contact with people who are, trying to get off of meth and using meth and all the consequences that come from it. And we had a roundtable today with several organizations that do that as well in terms of prevention and recovery. Part of this piece will speak to that in terms of the Youth Gang Prevention Fund, which will steer young people away from entering into a life of crime. We know, and police experts and community groups have told us that drugs are a way to get people involved in criminal activity, to get them hooked on drugs, then they go out and commit the petty crimes to fuel that. That's a big piece of this, as well as the reforms to services within prisons. That when you do have somebody who is incarcerated as a result of their crimes, we as a government and as a society have an opportunity to help that person, to give that person dignity back by helping them get off of drugs or acquire the skills needed. Right now in our prison systems, there's no real measurement for success to see if this program works better than that program. And so simply the first step, by having an audit of the performance of these programs, we can absolutely have better programming. We will be announcing other measures that related to drugs and addictions and prevention down the line. This specifically was about the three pillars of the main piece about making communities safer, but we will have a separate and focused policy well ahead of the next election campaign to speak to that.
Can you talk a little bit about the walk of fair time? What did you learn on that walk?
I think what stood out was the rapid rate of growth of the problem in the last short period of time. That 5 to 10 years ago, the rates of use of crystal meth specifically was nowhere near what it is today. The rapid escalation and just the intensity of the problem, that it really is exploding very quickly. And gaps within the system. We have community groups that could do more with a few targeted investments. We're talking about $30,000 for kitchen equipment at a drop-in center could really provide the leveraging of those volunteer hours, the leveraging of what people in the community are willing to do themselves. With a few targeted investments, you can really expand exponentially the types of help and assistance that they would be able to do and are willing to do. So my takeaway on that is that this problem needs serious action quickly, and that it absolutely has to be developed in a way where we're partnering with people on the street, we're partnering with community groups that are out there every day. I mean, we were walking around, and the police officer I was with and the member from the Bear Clan, they were being recognized. People were saying hello to them from across the street. They know the people in the area that are having trouble with addictions, that are having trouble with abusing substances, and also that have been victims of those types of crimes. So those are the best people to work with to help address the problems.
That would just sort of use one more for me. Would that be just direct funding then from the federal government to these organizations, or funded through the province?
Well, part of what I've announced today will be funded through the provinces. Where provinces apply for funding, we'll provide matching funds. But it is something that we are looking at down the line to say where we have models that are working very well with a little bit of targeted funding. Absolutely, we can look at that and say this is something that the federal government can, when it's recognized as being an excellent approach to solving these issues. It's absolutely worth investing in, because something that came up at the roundtable, when you look at the costs on the healthcare system, when you look at the cost to homeowners and the insurance system for vehicle thefts, a little bit on the front end, working with people to get them not taking drugs in the first place, or getting them off of drugs as quickly as you can when they do, the dividends pay for themselves tenfold down the line. So that's our framework as we think of things along that way as we go forward.
Mr. Scheer, many of us saw the reaction to the Prime Minister's tweet to Trevor Noah about the $50 million going to the Education Cannot Wait campaign. Can you just speak about your tweet and why you're bothered by it?
It just seems that this Prime Minister just can't help himself on Twitter. It always seems to be about impressing celebrities or people on the international stage. We saw this when he famously tweeted out that all are welcome to Canada. Then weeks later, we have a crisis at our border. And then we see this. We have a TV personality that Trudeau seems to want to respond to directly to jump in the story. And there we are. Canadian taxpayers are spending $50 million on a program. So it's a pattern that we're seeing with this Prime Minister, with Justin Trudeau, that he really seeks the, a lot of politicians like to be liked. He likes to have his tweets liked, and he likes to have his messages retweeted and shared, and it seems to be singularly focused on adulation from celebrities, whereas our party and our caucus is focused on doing what's right by Canadian taxpayers.
Monsieur Gieux, en français, peut-être s'il y a une réaction au gouvernement à votre la décision finalement de réduire la quantité, la limiter.
Oui, alors premièrement, je veux dire que notre parti, moi-même, j'ai beaucoup des amis dans le secteur énergétique en Alberta et je sais, j'ai entendu leurs inquiétudes. Ce n'est pas seulement les inquiétudes, c'est une situation très, très, très négative en Alberta maintenant. Beaucoup de gens ont peur pour l'année prochaine parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'incertitudes autour de le secteur. On prévu qu'on va avoir beaucoup de perdre des emplois. Mais malgré les discussions au niveau provincial, la raison pour laquelle on voit les discussions, les débats aujourd'hui sur les mesures proposées de le gouvernement d'Alberta, c'est parce que Justin Trudeau a tué 2 pipelines et on a une troisième qu'il ne peut pas construire. Et quand on a vu que le Premier ministre voyage partout au monde et dit les choses comme il était frustré parce qu'il ne peut pas éliminer le secteur énergétique si rapide, on voit les résultats de son propre politique. Il a décidé d'insérer les obstacles pour la construction de les oléoducs et maintenant on voit que le prix pour l'énergie canadien était tellement baissé, c'est un résultat directement de l'échec de Justin Trudeau de gérer le secteur.
Une relance là-dessus, maybe you want to mention in English and the same in French. Bill Moore suggested today that it's up to the provinces and the industry to address short-term solutions when it comes to the oil crisis, including buying more rail cars. So do you agree with that approach, and what would you do?
For Bill Morneau to say that it's somebody else's problem is so typical of this government. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's fault with Justin Trudeau. It's never his responsibility. He's never had to take responsibility for things in his life, and now we see in governments the exact same thing. He is the one, this government is the one that killed the Northern Gateway project. It's this government's decision that killed Energy East by imposing a double standard upstream and downstream emissions test that no other sector in the country has to answer for. So for Bill Morneau to turn around and say, well, it's up to the industry or the province, well, the industry was willing to build those pipelines. The industry had private sector dollars willing to invest, to spend investors' money to provide a return for Canadians and put Canadians to work. And it was Liberal government policies that have resulted in all 3 of those project proponents leaving Canada. And in the case of Kinder Morgan, leaving Canada with $4.5 billion of taxpayers' money. It's not somebody else's fault. It's this government's fault. It's Justin Trudeau's fault for deliberately killing pipeline projects that would have gotten our energy to market and get that fair return for Canadians. It's not some strange economic mystery that Canadian energy is being sold at a discount. It's being sold at a discount because we only have one customer. We only have one customer because the 2 projects that were envisaged to get our markets to Asian markets, to get our products to Asian markets in terms of Northern Gateway, and to displace foreign oil coming into Eastern Canada with Energy East, have been killed by this Liberal government. It's time for them to take responsibility. En français. Mais pour M. Morneau de déclarer que c'est la responsabilité de quelqu'un d'autre, ça c'est quelque chose qu'on veut souvent avec cette Premier ministre et ce gouvernement. C'est toujours la culpabilité de quelqu'un d'autre. C'était jamais la faute de Justin Trudeau. Mais pour le secteur énergétique, c'est directement la cause est directement liée à le fait qu'il a tué 2 projets d'oléoduc et il a une troisième qu'il ne peut pas construire. Et c'est ces décisions qui avaient résulté dans la situation où les investisseurs pour 3 projets ont quitté le Canada pour les États-Unis et dans le cadre de Kinder Morgan avec 4,5 milliards de dollars des contribuables. Well, it makes no sense to me that we live in a country where we're getting a discount for Western Canadian energy, and in Eastern Canada, we're importing oil from foreign countries. So to have a project that would bring Western Canadian energy to Eastern Canadian markets, filling Eastern Canadian refineries, creating jobs all along the way, and displacing foreign oil makes perfect common sense. And the reason why we don't have one today is because the Liberals killed it. So, you know, I've always been a strong proponent of linking Western Canadian energy markets to Eastern Canadian consumer markets. I see a lot of people protesting exports of Canadian energy on the West Coast. I see a lot of people who blockade and protest and try to prevent Canada from being able to sell our energy to Asian markets. I don't see them protesting tanker after tanker of Saudi oil coming into Eastern Canadian markets. So our government's record on this is very clear. While Conservatives were in power, we saw 5 major pipeline projects built, and built by the private sector, not with taxpayers' money. The reason why we don't have this energy infrastructure today, the reason why we're bleeding in Western Canada because of this price differential, and the reason why we continue to have to import foreign oil in Eastern Canada is directly related to Justin Trudeau's policies. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, tout le monde.